Hey everyone, welcome to Commander's Pod. My name's Duncan. I'm joined here by Jeff and Sloan.
Hello.
Hey.
And today we have a couple topics we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about collection styles, like how do you collect your magic? Play styles are one thing, but how do you build your collection? Do you collect? Do you only build decks? That type of thing. And we're going to talk about some other stuff, but we're going to start with our segment called Counterspell. And today what we're discussing is what should be done with the Commander's Council. Let's pretend anybody cared about our opinion. And we're going to discuss what we think should happen with the Commander's Council now with the passing of Sheldon Menery. We haven't heard much from the council since his passing. Even before that, he was ill, so they hadn't done much. There hasn't been any new bans. There hasn't been any ban liftings. Very little has been heard. What do you think should happen? What should be done with it?
I think this actually kind of brings up something that we had mentioned in a previous episode, which is I think now that we've had this time of them not really doing anything, might be a good time to introduce creating two separate categories for Commander, which is a casual format with its own ban list and the competitive format with its own ban list and its own rulings. I think this would be a good time to do it. Personally, because we haven't heard anything from them in a while, they kind of went quiet. Nothing's really been going on. Nothing's been happening. I think this would be a good time to transition it. And this would be a good time to maybe have that conversation and have them discuss possibly doing that and having this split kind of officially made of competitive and casual Commander.
Yeah, if we're just saying what we want, like, because I think they do a good job for what they're doing, but if we just get to be, I would do that. I would have a separate ban list.
I agree. But my thing is they're not doing any job right now.
Well,
there haven't been any new bans. There haven't been any new liftings. And the argument is made that the bans and liftings that they've made have been very all over the place. Some of them were needed in the beginning, but then some of them, banning Flash instead of making it specifically for CEDH that it was a ban, things like that.
but people complain about that in Commander. No one was playing it in casual. So
I was.
Yeah, it was very rare where people were playing.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's a little bit of like just fussing about nothing.
Well, but the point is, like, there are things that people feel are more powerful now than things that are on the ban list.
Yeah, so you're talking about unbanning some of the older stuff that isn't really a problem anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And banning, everybody talks about should the One Ring be banned? Should Orcish Bowmasters be banned?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to, I guess, each player's experience with those. Like if someone came to me right now and they're like, "Hey, you're allowed to throw one card on the ban list with the current, existing cards or what have you, what would you do?" Probably my number one vote is going to be Roaming Throne, and the reason why is it's just a ridiculously silly card that you can put in any deck, and it just breaks whatever deck you put in.
Hot take.
Right? Well, think about it. When you think about the cards that they've put on the ban list recently that we agree were good bans, what did they do? They simply were just way too good and were way too usable. And so when it comes down to
I don't think so.
There's, well,
I thought they banned because it affected the play experience.
And my argument, the stuff on the ban list should be the stuff that, as it's written, is just broken.
Right,
or
and that's,
as it's written is not casual.
Right, and
so to me, if I were to pick, I'd pick Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, that's not
to me.
casual.
Thassa's Oracle is not a casual win con. That is a CEDH win con.
I think they are going the right direction and protecting the experience. I just because they're limited because they don't have two separate ban lists. That's their real problem.
Well, they're limited by their own restrictions.
Right, and I think that's ultimately. That's the way to go about this. If you want them to do a more effective job for Commander, I think they need to do it. I think they need to say, hey, listen, we're going to create a CEDH ban list and we're going to create a casual ban list. The casual ban list, it's going to be specifically for those players who are just going to their LGSs to have a good time. And again, ultimately, because of Rule 0, you can technically play no ban lists, and you can play whatever you want technically when you go to sit down to play with your buddies if you guys all agree to it and you want to do that, because ultimately these are just guidelines. But I do think that if referring back to one of our previous episodes about competitive EDH, if you want to try to do that and you want to try to make it better for the people who do want to do it, you have to have a separate ban list for it. You have to have something that specifically is meant for the competitive scene. And, so I think ultimately that is the issue. They're restricted by their own restrictions, which, is silly. But yeah, they haven't been doing anything recently. I feel like there's...
I mean, the argument could be made maybe they didn't feel like anything needed to be done.
Yeah.
Sure.
Roaming Throne is still fairly new. We don't really know how it's going to
But I play it all the time.
Me too.
To me, it's never been a problem. Like, it does crazy stuff.
Is it gross? Sure. But to me,
I just think the fact...
it doesn't ruin a game.
No.
And again, if you're... Depending on how you're trying to look at it, but my point is, for example, that card is too easily utilized because of the fact of the way they made it. That's my issue, is because you have multiple things that you can have trigger, and then on top of that you can have things that make that trigger again and trigger, and it's just it gets ridiculous. Like, even in a non-good deck, it makes that deck much better if it's out on the field.
Yeah, but
it makes it much better and much stronger. And so my point is, if you're looking at what they need to ban in regards to casual play and competitive play, that is something that I feel like would land in one of those categories and be a point towards why they need to do that.
And this is why it's so hard to be on a group like that makes a decision, because there's not even a 1% of me that thinks Roaming Throne is an issue. But I would focus more on what affects the experience. And Roaming Throne doesn't hurt the experience. Matter of fact, it encourages more kindred decks, more tribal decks, and I think that helps the experience.
So I think part of what they try and do is, if you guys can't regulate yourself, that's when we'll regulate you. That's when we'll put it on the ban list.
Yeah,
so if players are abusing
if it's
Roaming
affecting
Throne,
the experience,
right? If players are abusing Roaming Throne, if it's becoming oppressive, that's when I believe traditionally they would ban it.
Right, and I think it will get there.
Flash was the first instance that they specifically banned something for CEDH players. That's where it was having the impact. That's where the ban was wanted.
Right.
Right.
And I think for CEDH, you do ban based off of power level. The difference is, I don't think in Commander you ban based off power level. You ban based off of experience, meaning Dockside is extremely powerful, but it doesn't hurt the game experience. Matter of fact, people get to go off and do exciting things, but it doesn't stop others.
Right.
The cards they typically ban, and I agree with them, are the cards that ultimately affect the experience of the game. So, like, if we split casual to competitive, I would think one of the things that would start being addressed more in casual would be stacks and land destruction and wheels.
I disagree.
Those type of
those
things would start getting affected.
We've discussed those before, but those are parts of the game that's not something... They would have to ban too many cards to address those, and it's a form of the game. The things they are going to address are going to be the things that make it so like, if they would split it, in my opinion, what they would do is take those cards which are on that line that say that if you have this in here, that's a CEDH card. Thassa's Oracle, if you're going for a Thassa's Oracle win, that's a very easy combo to get. That tends to be...
I agree with you.
2 tutors.
They would also do that, but I think there's already a soft ban on land destruction and a lot of stacks effects.
Where?
But it's unwritten. It's the unwritten rule that you don't do mass land destruction. It's an unwritten rule that you don't put too much stacks in your deck. That's already, most people understand that. We've had that discussion too.
Yeah, but
it's not
during
out of
that
control.
discussion, you said you didn't think that mass land destruction was an issue.
Because people follow the rule.
Right.
It's unwritten. And all I'm saying is just write the rule. We're already following the unwritten rule. Because new players come in, they build a deck, they have a whole bunch of stuff in it that breaks the unwritten rule, and then everybody's mad at them, and they're like, I don't understand what happened. I didn't know the unwritten rules. And I think that's a problem for experience.
I don't know that they'll ever go that direction. I understand it's in a direction they could go, but it hasn't been a direction they've traditionally said they want to go.
And I think the other issues too is, like you're saying, mass land destruction, because the problem is, even with that, like, I know there are specific cards that come to mind. Obviously, the most notorious one is Armageddon, right? 2 white, destroy all lands, right? Well, the problem is, even if you do single target land destruction and you have enough ways to do it over and over again, it becomes mass land destruction. So then you have to ban those cards that can do stuff like that. And I think that's where Duncan is getting to, is like, if you're trying to ban an entire play style, you're then going to eliminate a lot more than what you're thinking you're going to eliminate. And so I think ultimately what it comes down to is, yes, when it comes to casual, it's more about banning cards that take away from the enjoyment of playing the game. The one that I'll always go back to is Hole Breacher. You stinking throwing out a wheel card and then immediately throwing out a Hole Breacher. Everyone doesn't get to draw anything. You get to draw everything. No one has any cards in their hands the rest of the game is miserable. No one wants to play in that game. Every person, as soon as that happens, was just like, this is ridiculous, which is why they banned it, because it wasn't so much that the card itself was extremely strong, which it is. It was the fact that it was affecting the entirety of the format, where it was like, it just, you lost the spirit of the game.
But my argument is still, and everybody says, no, very few people agree with me. But to me, that one didn't bother me as much as Notion Thief. Hole Breacher, you got a bunch of treasures, nobody else got cards, you got cards. But with Notion Thief, none of them get cards, you get all their cards.
But the difference with Notion Thief to Hole Breacher is Notion Thief is 2 colors. So you have to commit to 2 colors. Hole Breacher is blue. That's it. As long as you have blue in your deck, you got it. So if you're doing Notion Thief and you want to do a bunch of wheels,
we're getting off
Duncan,
topic.
you're not wrong though.
You're not wrong, but you'd have to do blue, black, red, for example, to get a Notion Thief in there, because a lot of good wheels are in red. Wheel of Fortune is the most.
Blue has a ton,
one.
but anyway.
Blue
Going back to the main topic, like you were saying, this is probably why they don't do anything. It's because it's so hard. Doing nothing is going to get less people angry than doing something. And the reality is, if you put 100 Magic players in a room, they'd have 100 different ideas. And so it's just better to do nothing. And in that capacity, I get it.
But that's why I say they should do what they have traditionally done and ban that stuff which is not being regulated at the table level. If it can't be regulated there, they need to regulate it. And I do agree that they do need to ban. They do need to make a separate CEDH and EDH ban list.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even rules and things like that.
Yeah.
And
also, guys, just encourage you, if you're going to play in a group, just come up with your own rules. Come up with your own rule zero so you all agree. You all are on the same page, and that works. Duncan plays in a group where they play a lot of stuff. I remember sitting down, maybe we'll have the tails of the table real quick here for a second. Sitting down, and there were 2 stacks decks at the same game of 5 people. And I remember after the game just being like, that was possibly the worst experience of my life. But that's how I feel.
Right.
They think it's fantastic. And it's like, okay, great. If that's the type of game you enjoy, get people who enjoy that. It's not the one I enjoy. So
right,
we're all different.
But so that's just kind of our takes on where the Commanders Council can go from here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It is sad that Sheldon passed, but we do have to have some sort of ruling council on what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's just our take. For our next bit, we're going to talk about that doesn't do what you think it does, right? So we have the segment every week, and this one we're going to talk about Proliferate. Proliferate in and of itself sounds pretty straightforward.
Yep.
You can put additional counters. You can take, as many as you want. You don't have to choose, every counter on the board. But what happens is when a person or a permanent has multiple different counters, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where people are getting tripped up. Because I've seen people try and be like, well, somebody has, say, poison counters and experience counters. Well, I'm going to proliferate the experience counters.
Right.
You cannot just do that.
Because you're proliferating that thing. So
Right.
whatever it has. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So when you target something that has multiple different kinds of counters, if you're going to proliferate it, you actually have to, by the rules, proliferate all of those counters.
Right.
So if it was yourself and you're trying to do your experience counters, you're going to have to do your poison counters as well.
That's very interesting. And I haven't seen the opportunity come up very often, but I bet it has, and we just didn't see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do have the Proliferate deck with the Traxa.
Yeah.
Specifically because it's a Super Friends deck, so you got all the Planeswalkers.
Yep.
So you do have that deck that does it. I have the deck that does poison counters. so if those two decks were ever meet, that would probably potentially be the time that would happen, which I think they have met before.
Oh yeah.
And we've probably done this wrong, honestly, because I mean, looking at the ruling here and the wording, whenever a player proliferates, they choose any number of players and or permanents with counters on them, then put another one of each kind of counter already on there on these players or permanents.
Never knew that, Duncan. I never put that together, and probably 90% of people probably didn't, or I'm just a lone idiot, which is also completely
Well, it
possible.
doesn't
but
come up that often.
it's impressive
Right.
that you saw
But now
this.
we have rad counters too. That's another negative counter you can have.
Yeah.
And I play a lot with somebody who plays a
Experience.
experience counter deck. I can't
Okay.
remember the name of the girl, the lady commander that.
Neltooth, right? The grave one, the
Yes.
black and green one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So
Mira.
that was a situation that still didn't come up, but it made me think about it, and I looked up the ruling, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's how it would work.
Yeah.
She doesn't do proliferate, but if she had, that's
Right,
she
yeah,
would
I
have
mean,
had to do-
I know I actually had a deck a long time ago. I took it apart because it started getting, I think, a little too towards the CDH side, was Azuri of Progress. So he does the counters, experience counters, but what he does is he then puts 1/1 counters on target creature you control equal to the number of experience counters you have. So I did have some proliferate stuff in there too because I was doing 1/1 counters. So I do remember running him with the experience counters and all the 1/1 counters I had on my creatures and stuff like that. And there was some proliferate in there, but yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I never even thought about that. So if you have poison counters on yourself and you just want to proliferate your experience, nuh-uh.
Yeah, no.
you make sure you keep it under 10, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just something that now there's all these different types of counters, stun counters. You got +1 counters, but you have a stun counter on you. Oh, I'm just going to proliferate the +1.
Yeah. It's
Nope,
very
you
cool.
got to do the stun as
There's
well.
a ton of counters you put on creatures now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone has a shield counter on there, but they have a -1/-1 counter. You got to proliferate both.
Yeah.
And that's maybe not a good example because there's more positive counters than a shield, but it's something. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, you can't even do certain. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yep.
It's so weird because like thinking about it now, it's like, wow, there's a lot of things you can't do. So it'd actually be funny to just, just do like proliferate in a sense when someone has like a bunch of negative stuff on them and you're like, listen, I'll also give you an experience counter. I'm also gonna give you a poison though because I have to. But
Yeah.
I'm proliferating you, man. I know
Yeah,
what
you're
I know what you
welcome.
want from me.
Yeah, I'm just helping you.
I'm just trying to help you out.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do too with my kids is when you're using what's the green card that turns it into an elk? Oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it.
I don't remember, but the elkening
Yeah.
effect.
So I'll do that to them all the time. I don't say I'm going to destroy your creature. I always say I'm just going to give you an elk. And that's just fun. It's a
Right.
fun twist on things. Like
Yeah,
I'm just
if-
giving you presents.
If you wanna if you wanna put a positive spin on a negative thing, just tell them I'm giving you a 1-for-1. I'm taking away something, but I'm also giving you something. So technically,
That's right. And it's an
you're
elk.
even. Yeah.
Do you not like reindeer?
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty close to that.
Right.
It's Christmas.
I bet you that aggravates them though.
Oh yeah.
What aggravates you, Jeff?
Oh man, lots of things aggravate me, but what's personally aggravating me these days? You guys are laughing because I'm looking at my notes. People that complain about taking too long. So I like.
Now I definitely feel like both Sloan and I are being targeted.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, you guys do tend to do that.
I get targeted with every single one of these. I feel like recently, in the last 3 or 4, they've been directly skirting around the idea that I am somewhat involved in them.
Okay, you guys can't see it because we don't have video yet, but I'm gonna fold this up and hand Johnny a card that says "Get better soon,"
Yeah.
and he can maybe just take that to heart. But okay, so rushing people. So we've talked about it on another podcast. It's one of the most complicated games in the world, if not the most. And I like to play chess a lot as a kid. And so when you play chess, you get real comfortable with the idea of you take your turn and you wait. Because there are some chess games where you'll take a turn and you'll leave. and you'll come back another day and take your next turn.
Which we could do during Jeff's turns, by the way.
You guys can go on a small vacation. Because people need to be able to think through all the triggers and all the interactions and all the things. And it is a funny dynamic that occurs when you rush someone, because you rush them and then they make a mistake, right? Or do something wrong, and then you get mad at them. But you were the one rushing them. So, look, you do have to speed up your game. Make decisions to speed up your game, like if you're going to secure a tribe elder and sack the secure tribe elder, don't do it. Like, do it at a time where you could be going and looking for your land and it doesn't bother anyone else, even if that's not optimal. But when it's your turn and you've got to think through your triggers, you got to think through your steps, you got to understand what's going on with all the other players and make a right decision, you're going to have to take your time. There's no way around it. And just try to be patient with those people, and then help them understand what they need to do so they can get there quicker, rather than just rushing them and being salty.
So
Gotcha.
I get it. I do think there is a flip side to that, which you did go over, which you do have to then, as a person, if you don't want to be rushed, try and, speed up a little.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll do a counter to what's aggravating Jeff, and we'll say a scenario that's now aggravating. That's for me and Duncan. So just so everyone knows, we do harp on Jeff because he usually takes the longest turns, but he does have the most intricate decks. I think
Complicated. Yeah.
Complicated. Yeah, we'll use the poor man's word for it. So he has the most complicated deck. So a lot of times there are a lot of things he's trying to look up and think of and try to figure out. However, he will sometimes take a very long time on turn one when there's nothing happening. And that's sometimes when we're like, Jeff, just put down a land and pass your turn. And he's like, well, I got to make sure I put down the right one. We're like, Jeff, you're playing a one-color deck. Just put down a land and
No,
pass
I don't do it with the one-color deck, but I do play 5-color decks a lot.
He does. So he will sometimes
Yes.
take a long time on turn one just to figure out what basic land or what tapped land he's going to put in first.
That's right. When you have
to set up-
triomes, you have to decide what triome you're going to play.
Right. So I will say yes, you shouldn't rush players, especially newer players who are trying to figure out their decks. You definitely shouldn't rush them. That's not, polite. Maybe help them out or what have you. But at the same time, you do need to realize that you can't take 15 minutes every single time it's your turn to figure out what you're going to do. You do need to at least be thinking about why other people are doing things, trying to figure out what you're going to be doing.
And also have thick skin. You have friends, so they'll bust your chops. If you can't take it, just, get thicker skin. Roughen up a little.
So what you're saying to yourself is...
I'm not saying it to myself. These rules don't apply to me. What the hell are you guys talking about?
Okay. All right.
outta
Fair
here.
enough. So let's move into our main topic, and that's fine-tuning your collection style, right? Because I think a lot of new players struggle with, they see a lot of different people doing a lot of different things on how they collect,
Yeah.
and it's hard to figure out what their style is.
Yeah.
So Jeff, how do you collect?
So, I like to have every different type of deck. When I first started building decks, it was like, I want to try to build a different deck every time. Some people will be like, I like to have decks that interact a lot. I like to have all kinds of different decks. So if I don't have a graveyard deck, that might be the next one I want. Do I have a life gain deck? Do I have tribal decks? Do I have a wheel deck? And I want to try to get all those different types of decks.
Or from our last podcast, our episode, Snow Deck.
Yeah,
There's a new one
exactly.
that,
Like,
you're
I'm definitely
gonna
going to build that. That's
Yeah.
fun. But that's less meeting a niche, because the reason why I do that is if I have the deck, I understand how other people are thinking and what they're doing with that deck, because I also have one.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know how to deal with that deck more. The other thing I do is I like to collect cards, but I don't like having a giant collection on a shelf. So I collect cards to go into decks.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to own a Lion's Eye Diamond, I have to build a deck for Lion's Eye Diamond, if that makes sense.
Right.
So now I'm going to find out what deck goes best with Lion's Eye Diamond. I'm going to invest to buy that card. It's going to be in a deck I use.
Yeah, so you want a playable collection. You want
Correct.
a collection that isn't just sitting in boxes on your shelves, but rather in decks that you can play.
So I get to see it.
How many boxes do you like to buy?
A year?
Yeah.
I really only buy maybe, what do you think, 3 or 4? Maybe
One or
5?
two, maybe up to 4. 1 to 4.
Yeah,
on
I buy
average.
at least 2 or 3, yeah.
Um,
Not a ton.
Would you say that I have my opinion on this, but you're yourself. Would you say that has been satisfying for you? getting those boxes?
Not hit or miss. Like when I did Commander Legends, and I did some of those, it was definitely a hit. But lately, it's been a miss.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I would argue, I don't think the last at least year, maybe more, when you've bought boxes, almost every time I think you've been disappointed.
Yeah, but I just don't know if I'm going to do it too much more often. It's just not worth it.
I don't think that's your style, is my point. I open boxes, and whether I hit or not, I like opening them. I like having the collection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess I dipped my toe in everything. So Duncan kind of wrote out some things for us here that we went over before we started recording regarding different types of ways that you can collect. So Jeff is more of, I'm going to find a card I really like and build a deck around it, or find a deck I can put it in so that way I can collect other cards like it and kind of go that way, is the way he does it. Then Duncan listed on here buying boxes that he just mentioned, buying singles. So I think Jeff falls more into that category than any of the other ones.
For sure.
Buying packs, so you can just buy just a handful of packs every once in a while, or buying pre-constructed decks. So I kind of fall towards the packs myself, mainly just because I have 3 kids, and right now financially I can't buy boxes as much as I want to, even though I'd love to. And I have one other hobby, disc golf, that takes up a lot of my money too. So I got to kind of pick and choose where I spend it.
Frisbees are expensive, yo.
Yeah, they can be.
Especially when you lose them in trees and swamps. And
yeah, you know, it can get expensive when you're throwing water. I did get 2 of my discs back though from a lake, so I'm happy about that. But back to Magic. So I kind of fall into buying the packs. Like every once in a while when I go to the store, if I'm going to pick up groceries for my wife, I'll swing by and grab like a pack or 2 of a set, whatever set's out or whatever set I see. I buy singles sometimes that I'm specifically looking for, but my big thing is I like having a lot of cards so I can keep building or keep doing more and more things. So unlike Jeff, who doesn't like boxes of cards laying around, I'm kind of the opposite. I actually have in my office, I have a shelf, and it has all of my cards on my shelf, and they're everything from common or cards that cost 1 cent to, mythic rares that cost $150. Like I enjoy collecting them. I'm not collecting so much just to build. I just want to have them, so that way if I ever do want to build something, they're there for me.
Yeah, and you take your decks apart and build different decks.
I pull my decks apart a lot, and I
never
rebuild
do
them.
that. I never take my decks apart.
Yeah, and so the big thing for me is like sometimes if I feel like a deck has run its course, like I have a couple of my Aloro deck I took apart, my Bruna deck I've taken apart, Azuri, because I felt like they kind of ran their course, my Brago, and either they weren't fun for me anymore to play because I just felt like I wasn't enjoying it, or it was just miserable for everyone else to play against, or kind of a combination of both, where I was getting picked on a lot because this deck was pretty strong, and so it just wasn't enjoyable at all for anyone, in my opinion. So I have taken apart a lot of decks.
Oh no,
and
I
put them back
totally
together.
enjoy when I pick on you.
Yeah.
I enjoy when you pick on them too.
I guess that's true. But yeah, I mean, so I do more of like the singles, and then every once in a while I'll try to buy a precon, like the Thunder Junction precons that are coming out. One of those I really want to buy because I want to build the Assassin's Creed deck when Assassin's Creed come out, and it has a lot of cards in there that are going to be good for that deck. So I might buy that precon, which will then give me a bunch of extra cards that I need, like another. Probably because they'll have Arcane Signet in there again and Soul Ring and all that stuff. I'll get another copies of those so that way I can then put it into my next deck I'm going to build.
Duncan should have like an award, I think. Like Duncan should be contacted directly by Hasbro just to thank him for his purchases. Yeah, because Duncan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your? And by the way, I don't suggest anybody that wants to have a budget follow this, but Duncan, what do you do?
I buy it all.
Yes.
I buy boxes. I buy precons.
Yeah.
I go to pre-release and I'll get the pre-release kits.
And you pretty much buy.
And I buy packs.
Sometimes you'll buy every box that comes out in a year.
Sometimes, although I have gotten away from that
because the EV's gone down so much.
So the Crimson Vow set, Midnight Hunt.
Yeah.
I got burned on that. I did not enjoy anything I got out of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I shouldn't say it. I didn't get a good value out of it.
Right.
I didn't like the mechanics.
Because even though you're a collector, there is an idea at the end of the day that there's got to be some value there.
Right.
Yeah.
The day-night thing I find annoying, and most of that was half of that set was that. So I got all these cards I don't want to play because once you play that, you have to do the day-night.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to keep track. So on starting with that one, and then it again at Dominaria United, I felt was another one I just did not enjoy the set at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't like any of the having bought the boxes. So now I'm being a little more selective.
Right.
And on the precons, they're putting out so many precons now.
Yeah, that's hard to keep
I'm not
up with.
buying every precon. I
Right.
was for a while. I can't keep up with it. It's ridiculous.
I'm thinking about buying, like, they have that new collector precon, and it's like, man, I'm really thinking about it, but I'm just afraid they're just going to torch us on the value. And it's like,
Yeah.
if I buy a collector precon, I think you could buy all 4 of them for $600. If I'm going to drop $600 card value, I expect at least like, $1,000, because I can't turn around and sell it for $1,000. But I at least want to go on TCG Player and pretend like I have $1,000 worth
Right.
of value, even though you can never
Show it
sell
to your
for
wife.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
look, this is
Yeah, look.
1,000. No,
Sure. Yeah.
it's a great.
We're
investment.
netting 400.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
do what
I-
you're curious. No, I've replaced 600 with 1,000
Now this cardboard,
of this.
they're both made of paper.
I replaced this
but
green
this is
paper.
better
for-
paper.
This has more colors on it. Clearly, it's
Yeah.
more
It's
valuable.
more durable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I collect it all, and then I will still buy the singles that I need
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
don't have enough.
And
because
you
I
go to
also have a deck
conventions.
building
You
problem.
go to conventions and buy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've seen you at conventions buy stuff, and you're like, I'm like, why are you buying that?
I don't know.
It seems like a good price, and I want another one. It's like, how many do you have? Well, I have 7 or 8, but I need another one.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
it's there.
I have like 80 decks. So
Yeah. So he's just got I think I have like 24 decks, but they're all decks I play.
yeah,
pretty
that is. I
regularly.
am not good about that, and I have not been good about my New Year's resolution, which was to every month tweak one deck. I still haven't tweaked one.
Yeah,
So,
that's the one thing I do. I rarely take decks apart. I took apart my squirrel deck because it just didn't work. But the new squirrel stuff coming out might make it work. But in general, I keep my decks together, and I sometimes add cards to them. But I have to be careful that I'm adding fun cards and not just continually making them stronger, and then they're not fun for others.
even
to
the
play.
decks I don't play, I won't take them apart if there's still hope for them. Like you said,
Yeah.
if you build it and you had an idea and you're like, you know what, this really doesn't work, then I'll take it apart.
Right.
But if I feel like there's still, I just didn't get there and there's still hope, I'll set it aside
Yeah.
with the hope that I'll come back. And I have come back to decks and made them better. But it definitely is not the norm. I'm more
Yes.
likely to just build a new one.
So like
Yeah.
my collection style, like they had that secret lair that the Dragon was in, and it also had that scarecrow. I can't remember.
Oh, the
name
Reaper
of-
King.
The Reaper King, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, cool. I'll make these decks because this cards look awesome. The art looks awesome. I made that Reaper King. Friggin' thing did not work. And I was like, okay, this is not fun. Either I'm gonna have to make it so powerful it's not fun for others, or it just doesn't work. So there was no middle ground really that I felt comfortable with. So I took
Right.
it apart. But then I had the Reaper King, and I didn't want it, so I traded it. Because
Yeah.
I'm not going to build a deck out of it. Let someone else have
and that's
it.
the thing. So if you have excess money or money to spend on it, then one thing that people do is buy boxes,
Mm-hmm.
keep the things they want or that they'll use, and flip the rest.
Yep.
To then purchase something else next time or to get certain singles or whatever.
Right.
So that's definitely a tactic. Some people just buy a few packs, and you might hit a home run sometimes, and you might hit a home run on something that's worth a lot. You don't care about it. Trade it in, get better value. I have before. I'm not one who cares if it's the foil special art treatment. I definitely have preferred arts that I like, and I might keep it for that reason, but not because it's the most valuable version of it. So I have pretty good luck opening boxes. So I have before gotten a card I want to use, but in a form that's worth way more than I would have spent on it. I'll trade it in, get the normal version, and more money on top of that to get other stuff.
I think I've still been the one to open the most expensive card, though, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. How much was
Which
it?
one?
It was that
I know
Jeweled
Jeweled
Lotus,
Lotus.
special edition
much
out of
did you
the
get for
Commander's
that?
Legends. It's like 450,
Then
500
yes,
bucks.
I opened 2 Human Soul Rings.
You've
at
definitely
Command Fest Orlando in 2 different boxes in the
Yeah.
same day.
Yeah.
So in
you've definitely offered more value. It's not even close, but
right,
like
and those were
it-
300 a piece,
Yeah.
and now they're like down to like 125. So I'm stoked. For a while, I was very like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten.
I
rid of them.
honestly wish I would have kept the jeweled lotus. I wish I wouldn't have sold it.
Yeah.
In the future, I won't. The next time I open one of those cards, I'm just keeping it. I'm putting it in a deck.
Yeah. The next time, the once in a lifetime pull. The next time I pull it,
Right.
I mean, there will be a next time.
Yeah. And I will say too, like being the one who probably buys the least amount of cards out of the 3 of us throughout the year, just again because of the reasons mentioned previously. When I do get to grab a pack and I do get a cool card out of it, that it makes me really excited, it makes me happy, and I'm kind of pumped for it. And I do try to, if it is something I can build a deck around, if it's a legendary creature I can put in a deck, I do try very hard to do that because if it's a card I really like and think is cool, like for example, my wife got me a pack for Easter in my Easter basket, and I pulled out the new Massacre Girl from the
Nice.
from the Markov Murders of Karlov. So
Words are hard.
yeah, they're really hard. So at Murders of Karlov, I pulled out that new Massacre Girl, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, that's pretty cool. And I TCG'd it, and it's like $10 right now, I think, or something like that.
Those are the best experiences,
Yeah.
honestly, because like I had that really good pull. I don't buy packs very often at all.
Yeah.
But my wife knows, like when I want to be loving to my wife, I can go get her sushi, which she loves, or I'll go get her flowers. She can go buy me a pack of cards. You think you guys were over at my house when she came back with 1 pack of cards, open it up, it had Renin 6. And
Yeah.
at the time, it was like $70.
Yeah.
And I was like, good. She spent $4 and we just got a $70 card. Of course, we forget all the times that we got packs and we got a $1 card.
Well, and that's the thing I wanted to warn people. Like, opening packs can be a lot of fun. Opening boxes, you're just expanding that fun over X amount of packs,
30.
right?
or whatever it is now.
Much less than 30. But anyway, but don't open packs hoping to get the single you want. That's a real bad move because
Yeah.
you could have bought the single easier than you're going to find it
you
in
will
the pack.
you will never get more value by buying boxes than buying singles.
Yeah,
You just
when you
won't. It's not
when you go to
possible.
buy the single, you're
disagree.
getting exactly what you think.
I
you're
think
gonna
you
get.
can. It's gambling. It is gambling. It is 100%.
Over the course of 5 years, you won't,
I still
unless
think
you're
I
very
have.
lucky.
I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah,
I don't, dude.
Duncan,
as
you
much
don't
as you've
count.
bought, there's no way. You've bought a ton of stuff.
Yeah, and I almost always get more than my value out of a box. Like
But
probably
it depends
80,
on how you're
90%.
counting the value. If you're counting every uncommon,
No,
every
I'm
rare,
only
every
counting
bulk
rares.
rare,
I'm only
are
counting.
you counting
rares.
bulk rares?
I'm counting rares.
Yeah. See that's different. Like
Rares and up.
the most of that is not. I mean, you could put a 70-cent value to
Well,
it.
let me
$1,
give
but
you
no
an-
one's ever going to buy it.
Let me give you an example though. When Bolus's Citadel first came out, it was a bulk rare.
Yeah.
And not only did I pull a few, I went and bought them because I knew it wasn't going to stay that way. And I bought those cards when they were $1.
yeah,
So things can change, but it goes the other way too. My point is, when you buy a box, yes, bulk rare can add up to it, but those essentially they're not really. Might not even use them. The ones that are really valuable, you're not going to end up with the amount you spent on it in actually sellable, tradable cards.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the point I'm trying to make to people. Don't buy packs and certainly not boxes trying to get rich or trying to get the cards you want. If you have
Yeah.
specific cards you want, buy the singles.
yeah. I mean, and if they are more expensive, like for example, Jewel Lotus, I think when it first came out was 20 or something like that, and then it went up to 50, then it went up to like 75, then it went up to 150. Like it climbed and it came back down, I think.
And I remember talking to Duncan, and we're having the conversation, and Duncan was like, I don't know if you remember this. It's like, I don't really think it's worth it. And I bought like 6 of them at $50.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually very happy now.
Right. Well, that was before most people realized that Commander is the #1 format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not really I think they were just figuring it out, right? And I still had not figured that out. So I was looking at the whole game of Magic. This is only good in Commander.
You're not even talking number one format, but you mean what's number one format as of driving the price of cards.
Right.
Right. Because Standard at one point did and Modern
and popularity, because
Yeah.
you have to have the group. I didn't think there was enough Commander players
Right.
to make the card that valuable
Right.
at that time.
Yeah, I remember the first time I brought Commander to you when we were playing our D&D game, I think it was, or whatever, and I was like, hey, there's Magic. I mean, me and Jeff used to play Modern or Standard, but there's this format called Commander. We should play it. And you're like, what is it? And I explained it to you, and you're like, I remember the first time you said, I don't even think I can get to 100 cards in the deck if I tried. And then you came back a week later, you're like, my current deck is 600 cards. I can't figure out how to get it below that. And I still have no lands.
That's still my problem because I build from my collection.
Yeah.
I have this stack at the end, and I'll count, and I'm like, oh my word, without lands, I'm at 120.
Yeah, right. And so, it is funny thinking about back then when we were more in the, the less popular mode of Commander, and now seeing what it is, like you said, yeah, it's crazy how, Commander does drive a lot of the market, and a lot of the costs are based off of Commander now because of how popular the format is and how well it's done.
But it can change tomorrow, guys.
It could.
This is not an investment for your future.
So if you are starting out, my recommendations, and you guys can chime in here.
Yeah.
So if you're starting out and you don't have a lot of money, find a pre-con you like.
Yeah.
Okay? Start there. That's got to have the basis. Then buy singles to kind of flesh it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you are into the idea of playing in pre-release, that's another format that you can play where you can get some good cards and have fun playing. To me, because you're paying to play, like you're playing a game, you're getting double value there. So if you get good cards back, that's great. If not, you have a few cards to use, and it's only $25 or $30 depending on your shop to enter. That's a good way. If you have a little more money, buy a few packs here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're trying to build a collection, Jeff's style of collecting, he would not really care so much. He opens an occasional one just for fun. Right. He's not, looking to keep all the cards. He's like looking for the home run, like the baseball cards, looking for
or
that
something that
rare.
goes in a specific deck. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can use the other thing you could do is if you know there's a set coming out where you believe you could build multiple decks out of.
Yeah.
For instance, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were pirates, there were merfolk, there were dinosaurs, right?
Right.
Well,
And
I have an
vampires.
11 and 12-year-old. So I was like, if I just buy a bunch of boxes of these, I know I can build 3 decks. I bought a bunch of boxes of them. I didn't get my value back, but I did get 3 decks.
All right.
And
So
that's
there
worth
you go.
it.
There
So
you
you
go.
can do that
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Just have a plan. Don't just
And don't think you're going to get rich doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
don't.
The
buy
market.
stocks. Don't buy magic cards.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole segment that says you're wrong.
Well, it's very dangerous. If you're
But
really
don't-
good at it, maybe.
Don't do that. If you're into playing, then play.
Yeah.
If you want to do the MTG stocks thing,
The
do that.
finance, Yeah.
Don't try and cross those two lines. I think you're going to have problems.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think if you're starting into Magic and specifically Commander, and you're like, where do I begin? Look up the precons. Some of the old ones are really expensive, so just be prepared. They weren't that much when they came out, but if you like that one and that's how much you want to spend on that precon, go for it. But even the newer ones, like the Thunder Junction ones, I think they're all average between $40 and $45 is what they are right now, for pre-sale.
And
I
there's
think
some
you can
home
buy,
runs sometimes
yeah, and
that
you
come
can
out of precons.
Yeah, a perfect example was when we were first in Ixalan, when they had all the, if you control your commander, this costs nothing to cast
Fierce
spells.
Guardianship.
Yeah.
Deadly Rollick, Deflecting SWAT, all those were in precons. They were in, there's one in each precon that came out. There's, I think, 5 that year, if I remember correctly. So there are good cards that are in there that sometimes are not recognized as being as good as they are. So, but I would agree. I would say if you're going to get into Commander and you don't really know where to start, I would start with a precon and kind of go to your LGS and see what they have and ask them, hey, I'm getting new into Commander. What kind of options are there for me?
So let me throw in there too, because one thing I did that I did not mention, I think it was important to my early collecting. In the beginning, I was not buying a ton of boxes. I was still getting my feet wet. But what I did do is go on Facebook or on eBay and buy small collections.
Yeah. If you want to build a big base, that is definitely one way to do
and
it.
that's what I
how
want.
that's how Johnny got started. He bought someone's collection, but you also, do it, but also be careful because nowadays, less than when you were doing it, there are so many people out there to scam you.
Oh, for sure. You got to be
And
careful whenever you do something like that.
It's just a bad environment right now. Like, honestly, I'm real worried. This might have to be a topic later about when I'm buying cards, are they even real?
That would be a good topic for later.
I will say one way to actually buy bulk, if you want to do that to kind of build up a collection, there are some vendors that sell online like Cool Stuff Inc. and Star City Games that you can actually buy from them a box of just bulk, and it's everything from common all the way up to mythic rares, and you get like guaranteed 2 mythic rares, guaranteed 5 rares, and then a bunch of rares and other things, and it's like $30. It's from every set, so you could get really old cards that aren't
And
worth
Johnny
anything.
does love to buy that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's
I
fun.
would never
because-
buy that,
right? But I want to add
everybody's
to my
different.
collection. I want to build up my collection,
Right.
and so I can spend $30 on that, and I might pull out some cards I didn't even know exist and be like, oh, actually, this is a really good card for one of my decks I have, or I can get a bunch of cards that aren't really good at all. But it's one way to start if you actually want to have
A collection,
like a
lot of
foundation to
cards.
pull from and kind of build stuff from and use and have. That's one way I definitely would suggest doing it instead of buying the boxes of new sets because they're a lot more expensive a lot of times.
And then after you start, you'll figure out your collection style. But if you're gonna be more the Jeff style and you want only single cards, don't buy the boxes. Or buy them rarely and know that you may get nothing out of it of value.
Yeah.
But so as you move up, if you're not gonna be getting a lot of cards, what I would say is find the commander you want to play, buy the commander. Go through
you said it
your
right the first
store's
time.
bulk.
Find the commander you want to pay.
Yeah,
Because you're going to pay for it.
Yeah. And
But then go through your local store's bulk if you're lucky enough to have a local store. Their bulk rares, their bulk stuff, you're going to find stuff. You get to pretend like that's your collection. You don't get to take it all home. You got to pay for what you use. But you could go through all their cards.
yeah.
And a similar experience to how I build at home, you'll be able to do. You'll be able to go through all their cards. Oh, my word. Look at this thing. This thing's crazy in this deck.
Yeah. And I will say the local game shop that we go to, Mythic Forge, there have been times where, I get there later sometimes in Duncan because he lives right around the corner. And so I'm waiting for their game to finish up. So I'll pull out one of their bulk rare blues or whatever. And I'm like, all right, well, there's a couple of blue cards that I want to see. And I'll just start going through them. And, I spend $2 or $3 on, but there's specific cards that I was looking for to add to a specific deck. And they had them there. I just didn't have them in my own collection. So, it is kind of like a pseudo version of your own collection.
It's almost like a library, except that you have to pay for what you take out, but you can
and you don't have to
look
bring
at
it
all of
back. Yeah, you don't have to bring it back. So, a little bit better than that. But yeah, that's a couple different ways you can collect for sure. And I think, depending on what you're defining as collecting, whether it's collecting playable cards or just collecting a base of cards or just being a collection goblin, which Duncan just is, by the way. He also is a dice goblin in our D&D games. He has like 6,000 dice, I think. So, but any kind of collection.
Go home, baby.
Could you just go home?
So
Can we have that option?
Yeah,
Let's tell you
shortly.
what.
We're almost
The
done.
go big is always your option, but you've never really given us you'll just go home.
I do after I win.
That's true. So, but yeah, guys, just like Duncan said, be wise about it. Know that this isn't a get rich quick scheme or even a get rich long scheme. So, be cautious of what you're doing and have at it.
So
You're going to get poor. This is a get poor scheme. Magic the Gathering is a get poor scheme.
that is very, very true.
But have fun while you're getting there.
It is a money sink for sure. Yeah. But before we head out for the day, I do have one quick tale from the table for you. Don't play hungry. All right. I play at the local shop, and the problem I have often is that there's a Chinese place just 3 doors down. I can go and get food. I don't want to leave my games. I don't want to make people wait, even though they say I have no problem with
This
it.
is another
I don't want to
level
sit out a
nerd,
game.
but okay.
So I had one where I was getting real hungry, and I was kind of focusing on that a little too much in my head, and I was paying attention, but the hunger was really getting to me. And I watched actually Andrew of Kill Andrew First tutor for an Orcish Bowmasters 2 turns before mine. So then
So he has it.
I know he has it. He finishes his turn. The next person in line goes. They finished their turn. I believe it was Lizard. Now it's my turn. Now it's been 10 minutes, but I still know he has it. I'm just not thinking about it. And I draw, enter the infinite. And lo and behold, I have the power to cast it. What does that do, Johnny?
It is 8 blue, 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 and it says draw cards equal to the number of cards in your library. Then put one card from your hand on top of your library. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of your turn.
I can tell you now, I know I had no poker face. There was no doubt I was going to play this card.
We might want to read Orcish Bowmasters too and see if the listeners can put it together.
Yeah, so that is step 1, and then
Orcish Bowmasters, just summary. It's 1 and a black. It's a 1/1. And whenever an opponent would draw a card, except for the first card in their draw step each turn, you deal 1 damage to any target, and you make a orc
amass
army.
Orcs 1.
You
yeah,
amass
which is an
orcs
orc
1.
army. Yep.
And it also gets that trigger when it ETBs.
But
So
the
you get-
important thing is it has flash.
It has flash. So I very happily tap my mana.
But you made sure he was tapped down, right?
No. I was thinking about those crab rangoons, and I'm tapping my mana thinking after I win this game, I'm going to go get them crab rangoons. And I tap my mana, I cast my spell, and the moment I look up and see the twinkle in his eyes, I realize the error of my ways.
Yep.
And sure enough, he casts that Orcish Bowmasters. Kills not just me, but the whole table.
Yeah, so now you're eating your food while everyone's angry at you.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I sat the next couple games out, let them cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's my tale from the table. Don't play hangry. Make sure you are well nourished and thinking straight. So anyway,
Or at least well nourished.
yeah, either or. I mean, some of us have talents. Anyway, so that's going to do it for us for today. Thank you for joining us. We want to thank, as always, our producer, Jack May, and Info Pilgrim Productions. Goodbye till next week.